Seahawks fans, wherever you may be, welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, Seahawks fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, here with Keith Myers. Keith, we're back here again. Another win, playoff spot secured, and life's pretty good.
Not only playoff spot secured, but back in first place in the division. I know we'll get into that in a little bit, but very surprising and unlikely back in first place in the division, but we will take it.
Thanks, Jets.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. You know, it was a kind of a weird situation at the end of that game too. We'll talk about it, but where they decide to go for it on 4th and 4 at the end of that game instead of kicking that 37-yard, it would have been a 47-yard field goal, but they were at the 37-yard line of the Jets. Decided to go for it. That's fine if they think they can make it. But they turned to Goff to throw a long ball past 20 yards, and that's not his deal, and it fell incomplete, and that was it. Jets win. Jets probably ruined their chance at Trevor Lawrence in the draft by winning that game, but you know what? For the players, it's just more important in the moment to get the victory. And
the players don't care about Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, well, now Jacksonville is in kind of the seat there to take that pick. So
one of the people most pleased about that development is Trevor Lawrence, because he came out earlier in the year and said, like, you know, that he feels like the team that he's on could beat them, and they're poorly run, and he's like, why should I go play for them? And so for him to now have an opportunity to not have to play for the Jets, I'm sure he's ecstatic.
Yeah, and stay in the Southeast area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about Seahawks stuff. Well, first, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. It's holiday season, man. It's almost Christmas and all of that. No longer, like, I got some time off and feeling pretty good about all of that.
Sweet. Nice.
How are you?
I'm doing good. Got the holiday shopping done. For the
How's
most
the golf
part.
been?
Golfing was good last time I went out. I think I shot an 88. I'm normally in that range. You know, I'm not in the 70s golfer. I don't keep a handicap or anything. I get out like once every couple of weeks. So what does that translate to? 25 times a year. And that's if I'm lucky. I've had some back issues and stuff. So, you know, typically 15 to 20 times a year. So that's the kind of golf I'm playing.
But the thing is, it's up here. It is gray, pouring down rain, and like 42 degrees.
Yeah, yesterday was 70.
You're down there playing golf in the sun. So
yeah, it's 77 degrees yesterday in December. I love it. Now it's supposed to be. We're going out to Talking Stick Resort golf course on Christmas Eve, my wife and I, and we're playing an afternoon round of golf. And I'm hoping to keep playing at least to my standards, which are in the 80s. And I enjoy doing that. So one of these days I'll shock myself, because the first hole on Silverado, which we played on last week, and of course I'd never played before, and I got paired up with the guy that joined us and my daughter was out there too. So we got paired up with a fourth guy, and my first hole was a birdie on a par 5.
Nice.
Like, I just had a tremendous drive, and then I followed that up with like almost onto the green, and then my pitch shot was maybe 40 yards out, and I hit it within 6 feet of the hole, and then just putted it in. And I was like, well, that's a good start, but it's all downhill from here. And sure enough, I had a few pars, and quite a few bogeys, and whatever. It was fun. It's fun to get out. So this week, let's talk about injuries and player updates and so forth as we get started. First big thing, I think, this week is Josh Gordon is officially back on the roster. It cost Penny Hart his job on the roster. Unfortunately, he was waived. Hope he gets, sent back to the practice squad if possible. But
that's where he started the year.
Yeah,
so.
But having Josh Gordon though,
well, Penny Hart never offered anything on offense.
Did you see though that the Josh Gordon quote I can't remember who it was, but he's like up to 238 pounds with 7% body weight or body fat.
So basically, he's trying to look like DK Metcalf.
Yeah, and he's in shape and he's ready to go. So it'll be interesting to see if because he hasn't been able to practice, and so in theory, unless him and Wilson have been getting together in the off hours, which is entirely possible.
It would be in a normal year. I don't think
he did have to go through
this year.
He did have to go through COVID protocols, so that would have been kind of nobody's going to talk about that. But we'll see what kind of chemistry comes into play here. If he gets more than a couple targets a game, and a couple pass catches a game, at least in these first 2 games, I'd be surprised. I mean, if he came out and had like a 5 or 6 catch game or something, that would be kind of crazy. But it's nice to have him back as a legit third weapon that's potentially more consistent than David Moore. For me, David Moore he's okay. And he gives you some catches now and again, but he also gives you some plays where you're just perplexed, like his feet are stuck in quicksand, and they give him a lot of chances, a lot of touches. I think he had 5 touches, in this game or the last game, I can't remember now, where he had like 15 yards on those 5 touches, opportunities. You need more from a guy that they're doing some end around stuff with and all that kind of stuff. It's just not working out. And then the return stuff, I think that job got taken away from him. So,
yeah, he's a guy that has the talent. We've seen the production, and then the consistency just isn't there. He'll disappear for huge stretches, and it's frustrating because you want to see a guy like that succeed. But he was also a 7th round draft pick, and has kicked around quite a bit, with this team, and earned a much bigger role than you'd ever expect a 7th round draft pick to earn.
Yeah. He'd be a great 4th option, on a normal situation. And this is going to end up being a normal situation going forward with Josh Gordon, because now he's going to get pushed back a little bit. Touches are going to be fairly limited. Freddie Swain, they need to make a decision if they value Freddie Swain's skill set or and so, and the Freddie Swain had that nice reception close to the end zone, almost had the score there, if he was able to keep his feet down. Do you take that guy completely out of the situation? So
I don't think so.
Touches are going to be limited, and then you got Greg Olsen coming back this week as well.
So Freddie Swain is your slot option, and he can do a bunch of different things, but he's a slot receiver, whereas David Moore is more of an outside guy. And I think at this point, Josh Gordon's going to be more of a slot guy. He's going to be a big slot, and so I think what you're looking at is David Moore is going to play if Metcalf or Lockett come out, and then it's about who gets the snaps when it's a 3 wide receiver set. Is it going to be Swain or is it going to be Gordon? And my guess is it's going to be a mixture.
Yeah, well, you want to go ahead and give Josh Gordon the reps now. You know what you've got in Freddie Swain at least this year, and you're trying to figure out what you've got going forward into the playoffs. And so you've got to get Josh Gordon some reps just to get some rhythm with Wilson, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So I mentioned Greg Olsen coming back, which is crazy, coming off the tear on the plantar or fascia in the foot. So that's great news. I mean, that's way early, and he's only been missed 3 games, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you're looking at like type of injury that would be 3 months, and he's out 3 weeks and is coming back and getting ready to play. And
well, I mean, the only way that is even possible is if it wasn't as big of a tear, or a complete rupture as was first indicated.
Yep, and that is what it is. Is that he obviously, we're told it was tear and it's going to be, months out, and technically he could be back. But don't count on it because it's going to be a long thing. I mean, that's what we were told. And then, but now he's back. And so this isn't something where it's like, oh, well, you can work your way back from it. And as long as you put in the work, you can get there. No, it's got to heal. And if the only way it's going to heal is if it's not nearly as bad as what we were told. And I don't care. I'm still excited to have him back. I mean, is he a dynamic player or anything?
Guy.
No.
Yeah. Right. Experienced guy, can get you a clutch third down conversion. That's really what you're asking for right now. Can block in a situation, a red zone target. I mean, those are all positives that the team lacks when he's not available. Disley does a great job, but behind that, there's really nothing that's consistent. Hollister's been a great pass catcher, but doesn't give you anything in the blocking game. So,
well, and they've been using Disley so much as a right tackle.
Yeah.
In recent weeks because of Brendan Shell being out. So Disley's been asked to stay in and block.
I tell you what, and we'll talk about this, but that Hyde run, 50-yard touchdown run, Disley was the tight end on that, close into Abuahe on that right side, and came across Abuahe and blocked down and created that entire wall of open space for Hyde to scamper out to the right.
I mean, that's the thing about Disley is he is one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL, and we knew that with him coming out. Like all the pass catching stuff that he does has been a bonus, but we knew he was a great blocker, and they have asked him to be a right tackle in recent weeks because their right tackle's been hurt, and they've been rolling through Abuahi and Wheeler over there, and it's not been great. And so Disley's had to stay in there, and it really has limited what the offense can do because it's just one more person in coverage that's not covering. You know what I mean?
So,
that's out there. So
I know it's the Jets and the Washington football team, and Shell has been out. And the Seahawks have put together back-to-back 170-yard rushing performances, or at least 170. They did 181 in this game. So that bodes well. I mean, that does point to the fact that they are having some success, at least with the max protect type stuff.
Yeah, they're keeping extra tight ends in. Nick Ballor's got a few plays at fullback, which is weird because he's a fullback in name only, and is just a special teams guy. But they've been doing things they need to do in order to keep guys in and try and keep Wilson from getting clobbered and open up running lanes. And it's worked. It's worked really well. And to do so against the Jets is one thing because the Jets aren't a good team. But to do so against Washington is a different thing because Washington's front four is great.
Yeah, they came into the game ranked 10th against the run, and first or second in a bunch of different categories as far as pass rush percentage, sacks, all that kind of stuff. Defense overall, they're I think they were number 3 coming into that game. DVOA, so that's legit.
I mean, at one point in that game, they went to a 5 defensive lineman formation where they brought Kerrigan in. And played with 5 defensive linemen. And the first thing, trying to stop Seattle's run game. And so Wilson just checked out of his runs to some quick passes to, DK Metcalf and forced them out of that. And it was a great little chess move by the Seahawks to keep the Redskins, or not even Redskins, the Washington football team from doing what they wanted to do defensively. I kind of liked what we saw there.
It's crazy because we kind of called that out in our last podcast when we were previewing this game, that this would kind of be the game plan for Seattle to attack their strength by running straight into it. And I thought they did a great job. We'll talk about it a little bit more. Brandon Shell, we mentioned, there's definitely a possibility that he can return this week. It's going to be a game time or, close to the end of the week decision as per the norm on him. It'd be nice to get him back. And then Upati had a stinger in this game. That's kind of a repeat injury for him. And Pete said that he would remain questionable this week. I think they'll probably end up holding him out just because it sounded like it was pretty significant. And then Dunbar is set to return this week as well, although the indications are that he is set. That remains to be seen if that actually happens or not. So, and when we'll see how that disrupts the defensive backfield, which is actually playing really well overall in the last 5-6 weeks without him.
Yeah, and actually, and the best cornerback on the team this year is the guy who's currently playing in his spot. And sorry, Quentin Dunbar, I don't think you get your spot back because.
Well, and Pete said that.
He did in his thing on Monday. He was basically said that DJ Reed deserves to continue playing because he's played so well, and he did. He played outstanding in this game and drew a tough assignment. McLaren is their number one guy. He's their star, and DJ Reed had him and pretty much shut him down.
Yeah, they did.
And that it was. I mean.
Yeah, their wide receivers had to combine 5 catches for 60 yards or something in this game. And their all their yardage came from their tight end, Logan Thomas, that had a great game. I think he had 14 receptions for 101 yards.
Yeah, Logan Thomas and J.D. McKissick were their offense, and that's exactly what the Seahawks wanted.
Exactly.
Right. That is how they design this defense is go ahead, take the 3, 4, 5 yard, little thing. We'll come up and make a tackle. But in order that means to have any success and score touchdowns, you have to string together so many consecutive plays because everything's short. And eventually we'll get there as there'll be a penalty or, a sack will happen or, you'll misfire a throw and your drive will stall. And that's just the way the defense is designed. And yeah, Logan Thomas had 874 catches for 3 million yards, but it didn't matter.
Right. They were all underneath. Right.
Everything was short. Everything was like 5 yards here, 6 yards there. And yeah, it strung together and got some first downs and kept them on the field a little bit, but it was never enough to get them down into the end zone, not until the end of the game.
It's interesting because Washington had a similar game plan on their defensive side of the ball. Let's just talk about the Washington game. We'll get to the Pro Bowl stuff in a little bit. It's interesting because, Seahawks Twitter, of course, is really upset overall at this game because it just didn't go quite as blowout planned as everyone wanted it to be. And it was never really going to be that kind of a game facing a team like Washington because their defense is stellar. I mean, it really is. It's stout up front, and they do a good enough job on the back end to make things tough for you. And again, another team, Washington, tried to take away the deep ball from Seattle. And that was the plan going in all along. Seattle probably knew that and had a plan up front to run the ball, to have that be the focus. Seattle came out on the very first play, ran Carson. Second play, ran Carson, picked up a first down. We knew it was going to be one of those days, right? And Seattle on defense had a similar game plan. They were going to have everything up front. They were going to make Haskins dink and dunk all over the field. In the first half, Keith, Seattle was extremely successful, held them to 3 points, and did very little. They had very little success against us. They had a lot of 3 and outs. Seattle was able to move the ball on offense with their running game and able to score with a touchdown with Hollister. And then Hyde had that long 50-yard scamper that we talked about a little earlier. And then in the second half, it was kind of a slog a little bit. So Seattle went into their base defense, stayed in their base defense, basically, gave everything underneath. Washington was able to start executing a little bit and converting some third downs, marched down the field. I think they had a 97-yard drive once. They had a 67 or 66-yard drive another time for touchdowns. They didn't get the conversions, so they missed a field goal, and then they missed extra point, and then they missed a 2-point conversion. So that the score ended up being 20-15, and we ended up having to save it with that with the ending drive for Washington, our defense came up big with 3 sacks in there, including the sack. Well, it was Robinson had a sack, Collier had a sack, and then our new guy had the most amazing sack I've ever seen. I mean, he just ran over Moses and plowed Haskins into the ground, and it was just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, Dunlap's been such a good addition.
It was just crazy.
It's been great. Well, I mean, you look at, they had a couple of long drives, and the Seahawks had some things that got stuffed, and it didn't, but that was going to be, I mean, you look back to last week's show when you and I did our prediction, I said, 23-13, it was going to be a slog. It was going to be like this game that's going to be like, it's going to be kind of hard to watch. Defense or offensively, it was going to be ugly on both sides, and that's what we saw. I mean, it was. I keep saying this, and I want to make sure that we point it out. I believe that Washington's front four is the best defensive line in the NFL,
and they are.
And I
neutralize them.
Yeah, and we neutralized them. They also neutralized a lot of what Seattle wanted to do offensively. They were keeping Will Disley into block full time. They kept Hollister into block at times, which, has varying degrees of success. They kept their backs into block a lot. And so by doing that max protect kind of situation, you have, 2 or 3 receivers out in routes, and they've got 7 people covering. It's going to be hard to complete passes.
Yeah. Well, I think, the fans are upset because after leading 20-3 going into the fourth quarter, we give up those 2 touchdown drives and make it a little bit more interesting than it probably should have been at that point. But the defense did come up big when it really mattered. And I think that's a really good sign that the defense is able to step forward and make plays when they need to make plays. And I think Seattle should be, that should actually make us feel a little better about the team. In addition to the run game kind of coming up and Chris Carson being healthy and stuff. Boy, he looks really good out there. And his fumbling this year has not been an issue at all. He's just been running over folks and hitting guys and making defenders think twice about coming up and hitting him. Even if he's close to the sideline, he's going to hit somebody before he steps out of bounds, which is crazy. In Seattle, for its faults or whatever you want to say, I don't think that they have. It's not that intense for me. I go onto Twitter and I see everyone, asking for coaches' heads, and Russell Wilson's playing awful, and the defense, sucks because they gave up things, and everyone wants the offense to start passing the ball again and doing all that. And it's like, this just wasn't that kind of game. It never was going to be.
And I'm with you on that. Like a couple weeks ago, and you and I had like kind of the debate about the defense, that they gave up 300 yards and a half, even if it wasn't, even if they didn't give up points, but it was to a bad team, and that was really frustrating. But this wasn't that. This was against a good defensive team, a really good defensive team, and they played the game they needed to win. Would it have been better if they had thrown the ball all over the place and put up 40 points? Of course it would have been better, but they didn't feel like they needed to do that to win. What they felt like they needed to do to win was to run the ball, shorten the game, protect the defense a little bit so that the defense could be rested. Those are the things that they felt like they needed to do, and they did them. They took what the defense gave them and scored 20 points and won. And I also think that if Washington had kept this game closer throughout the first 3 quarters, that Seattle would have put up more points. But they didn't. Like they tried to shorten the game. They weren't throwing the ball down.
Exactly, they did. They tried to shorten the game. They flipped the field. We can talk about Michael Dixon later, but he had 4 punts inside the 20 that really helped the field position game for the Seahawks. I think the average field position on those 4 punts was at the 8-yard line. I mean, come on. So when you have that sort of weapon, you want to be able to use it. The defense has been playing well. You get them back on the field. I think that's a good strategy in this game, given the fact that Washington's offense is really mostly inept for the most part. But they did have a couple of sustained drives. Now, Pete said in his press conference, he said, in this game against that team, we neutralized their strength. So that was the idea going in. And then he said, this is the game we wanted to play. Even though the offense had 49 yards or 39 yards in the fourth quarter, you just want to hold on in a game like this. You don't want to give them a turnover to help them out at all. And so I get the idea. Now, the what you want to see from the offense, though, in the third and fourth quarter is better execution for sure. They had some plays there where they couldn't convert on third down. That was the difference. Russell Wilson had the interception where Sweat was able to make a great athletic play, jumping up, tipping the ball, and making that interception happen.
That happens.
But you complete that to Carson, and that whole drive kind of keeps going, and we score at least 3 more points. And you just have a different feel for some of these things if you get conversions.
Carson was open in the you're right there at the sticks, and Wilson was on the outside, and normally he will get that ball past the defensive lineman and to his player, and Sweat just made that leaping tip and happened to tip it to where one of his other guys was going to be to catch it. So that's more of a luck play, and I'm not
we had that third down conversion
attempt
to Carlos Hyde later on that went through Hyde's hands for a first down. That keeps that drive going. I mean, there's just certain plays along the way that make the offense sputter a little bit, and those things get converted, and it's just kind of a different feel a little bit. And then the penalty by KJ Wright, where he made the hit on McLaurin, where it was called for a 15-yard penalty on unsportsmanlike conduct. That was just bogus. There was nothing that KJ Wright could do. Didn't really hit him in the head. If he did, it was incidental, and it was a shoulder pad kind of a hit. But McLaurin put his head down after he caught the ball, and KJ was already in the air trying to make the diving stop. So what do you do?
Yeah,
and that extended that drive, and they went on to score their last touchdown. And so you make that stop, it turns into 4th and long. They punt that ball right there. So
well, and I'm going through the second or the fourth quarter drives, and one of the things, this was the Seahawks hadn't gotten Rashad Penny any touches, and so they gave him a couple where he went for no gain on one.
Yeah, that looked tentative a little bit, but the other
a little bit. But he also it was a pitch play, and it got read by the outside linebacker, and so they had contain out there, and so it's like, okay, that happens. But then the very next play, he goes up the middle for 6 yards.
Yeah, that was great. I thought, in fact, the fact that they gave him the ball up the middle in that run, that base,
and he was close. He was the guy caught his ankle and knee a little bit. Otherwise, he might have been 15 yards up that, because he had space. Basically, the one last guy that could make a play, dove into his lower leg and was able to get him down. But other than that, it was well blocked, and that could have gone for more. But they got him those, and then the play after that. So it's still 3rd and 4. That's convertible, and it turned out to be a 3-yard pass to Hyde. He just couldn't break the one tackle he needed to, and fall forward for the first down. So it ended up being 4th and 1. Now that was one of those plays where it's 4th and 1, but you're at the
50-yard line, basically.
Yeah, you're at the 47. You're at midfield. You go for it there, and run it with Carson and get the first down, and you run the clock, down, and this game isn't nearly as close. But they chose to punt it because the defense had been playing pretty well.
Yeah,
and you have Dixon, so it's different. When the defense was terrible at the beginning of the year, I think they would have gone for it there, but they didn't feel like they needed to.
Yeah, I agree. And so we've just pointed to 3 or 4 different scenarios where you're successful in execution on those things, and it's a completely different feel and a different outcome. We still won. We still won. We did what we wanted to do. The defense got the win for the team at the end there by forcing the late Hail Mary and getting the sacks right at the end. And I just think overall I'm pleased, and everybody doesn't look at it that way, and that's okay. But it's hard to win in the NFL. It's hard to win on the road, and it's hard to win against a top defense. And so I'll take it. I'll take the win. I saw enough here that you can take away that was positive. The running game in particular, that's transferable, especially to our next opponent, the Rams, who also have a really good defense and a very sound defensive line, best defense in the NFC West. And I think that bodes well into the future when we're going to face better quarterbacks. We're going to need some time of possession type stuff. We're going to be able to need to grind the clock. If we do get leads, we're going to be able to have to sustain some drives. So having that running game coming out of this game for a couple weeks in a row, being really good at it, and having Chris Carson just look really nice, really healthy, I think, and has been playing really well, seeing the field really well, catching the ball from Russell Wilson on those release valve type plays. I just think it's a good thing. And then to have the defense kind of step up there, that's a great thing. I mean, think about where we were in the first 8 weeks of the season. The defense was historically bad overall. We weren't getting any pass rush. I think since week 8, Keith, we have 31 sacks. We lead the NFL, which is a remarkable turn of events considering how poor things were looking at the first part of the year. We were thinking there's just no way we can go deep in the playoffs. We're winning games, yeah, but we're squeaking these things out and the defense isn't showing up and it's all on offense and we're having to rely on Russell Wilson. To have all 3 phases of the game now kind of coming together, I think is tremendous. And as far as a playoff type team, the way that you have to win in the playoffs, I think it's a good thing.
Well, I mean, let's look at because you're right. They went from having no pass rush whatsoever to having one of the better, more successful pass rushes in the NFL. And look at where it's coming from, and where the improvement come from. I mean, obviously, Carlos Dunlap, his addition has been great. But in this game, Alton Robinson really had a great game and really stepped up and played well. You're getting more interior pressure from Jerron Reed and Poona Ford, right, because Snacks Harrison is letting them.
I totally agree.
Absolutely. Be more disruptive. You're getting, LJ Collier continues to perform on.
Defensive backs are performing better, which gives your front line just a few split seconds longer to get to the quarterback.
Yeah, and you have the best pass rushing defensive back in NFL history.
That's just crazy.
Playing well, and they're getting it from a lot of different places. There's a lot of guys that are stepping up and playing better, and they're just. It's not like, oh, they traded for Dunlap and Dunlap's had 12 sacks and everyone else is still bad.
Dunlap has 4.5 sacks or whatever.
He's
Collier's playing better. Ford's got it. That Collier and Ford combination there in the interior rush is
working
really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Jamal Adams. My goodness, Keith, 9.5 sacks, and that's coming in like 10 games, which is remarkable.
NFL record 9.5 or so. 9.5 sacks.
So if you could say, John Schneider went out and got us a pass rusher. He gave up 2 first rounds to get a pass rusher, and I'm not going to tell you his name or his position, but he's got almost double-digit sacks after we made that acquisition. You'd be ecstatic. Look at around the league of all the other pass rushers that were acquired in free agency and via trades or anything like that, and Jamal Adams is as good a pass rusher as anything out there in the market that we could have acquired.
Yeah. And he also plays well against the run and
he's got 72 tackles.
Yeah. Does a lot of great things.
Tackles for loss.
Yep.
Yeah. Been playing better pass defense as well. So speaking of pass defense, I mean, we had Griffin with another interception, laid out really nice on a tip ball. I thought made one of the best interceptions I've seen in a while, just laying out and catching that ball and making sure he had possession of it before he hit the ground. And then we had, who was it? DJ Reed. have that
With the
really
other
nice interception where he came off his guy, towards the middle of the field and stepped in front of that to intercept that. That was really a great play. And we talked earlier about DJ Reed being one of the most valuable additions that this team had. Came over on the waiver wire from the San Francisco 49ers. Thank you, San Francisco, by the way. In July, didn't know what we had really. Had a pec injury. At the time, the diagnosis was that it could be anywhere from 6 months to to next year availability. But John Schneider went ahead and made that acquisition just to get him on the roster because they liked what they saw in film from him earlier.
And I think that that story needs to be told a little bit because, I mean, you look at, he had that injury and the 49ers didn't cut him. They
didn't want to give up on him. They were going to stash him.
They just wanted to stick him on injured reserve. And if you're going to push someone off the roster and onto injured reserve during the offseason, they go through waivers. And typically that is a formality, right? Because the guy, you're not putting someone on IR who's going to play. So that means you're putting someone on IR who is going to miss the year. And nobody's going to waste you're already trying to get the roster spot back. That's why you're putting them through waivers to get them on IR. So why would another team use up a roster spot for that same guy who's not going to play? So like I said, it's normally a formality, but the Seahawks saw something in Reed that they really liked, and they were willing to, go through the offseason with an 89-man roster instead of a 90-man roster. And that's what they did. And because they wanted to keep this guy, and it's really paying off. It's really paying off for them.
Absolutely. They end up with a starter. It's crazy because you look at the physical attributes of DJ Reed. He's like 5'8", 185, 189 pounds, right? So you're thinking slot corner, and
especially in Seattle where they like long.
Yeah, exactly.
Long corners.
That's all he can do. That's all he's going to be good for. That's awesome. Let's see if he works out, whatever. He comes in, he plays a little bit. You're going, well, what are they going to do with Amadi? And earlier it was, what are they going to do with Blair? And then he comes in, he plays, he looks great. He's athletic. He's kind of a playmaker. He's able to do his thing. And all of a sudden the injury to our outside corners gives him an opportunity to play some outside corner. Well, let's throw him out there, see what happens. We'll shoot. He's pretty good, it turns out. In fact, he's so good, he's going to displace Quentin Dunbar, returning to a starting spot, Flowers, returning to starting spot, and he's the guy that's going to be opposite Griffin going forward in the last two games and into the playoffs for the Seattle Seahawks. It is a great story, and it's a great opportunity for John Schneider to turn over every rock that's out there to bring in talent and acquire talent for the team. Even if they've got to wait for a while, they're willing to do that. They're patient, and hats off to the organization and TJ Reed for creating an opportunity for himself. He said in a presser that he always believed that he could do it. He just needed the opportunity, and he found the opportunity here in Seattle, and he's running with it. So now you've got these question marks in the offseason. You've got Griffin in a contract situation. Dunbar is a 1-year deal. He's in a contract situation. Flowers, they need to figure out what's going on with Flowers long-term. So you've got, and then you got DJ Reed obviously on a 1-year deal. So now what do you do? You've got your entire defensive backfield that's under, that's almost out of a contract situation, and you're going to have to make a lot of decisions. So these last three, couple games and then the playoffs will determine, I think, how Seattle goes forward, at least with Griffin. As far as, are they going to pay him? What is he going to command out there in the open market? Dunbar, I don't know that the team has seen enough to be able to warrant paying him anything more than like a vet minimum deal next year. And
I don't know if it'll be a vet. I don't know if it'll be a vet man, but it won't be. It won't be.
Well, maybe like a 1-year deal for $3 or $4 million, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be something like that. They're not gonna pay him. He's not gonna get $12 million.
And I don't know that anybody else would, given the injury situation. And
and the fact that he played terribly at the
and he had
the
the
first
Pro
half of the
Football
year.
Focus when he was not injured. He's pretty decent. He's got good coverage skills. He's long, but he hasn't shown that in Seattle. So you kind of look at that. Maybe I don't know exactly when the knee kind of flared up. I know he's always had a little bit of an issue. Pete said he's probably going to have surgery in the offseason to correct it. So it must be just a little meniscus tear. Something's going on in there, right? That's bothering him. And so what does Seattle do? What do you think? You got to pay DJ Reed. I mean, he's got to be coming back.
Yeah, and so what you're going to end up with DJ Reed is he's going to be he's going to get a Justin Coleman type deal, $5 or $6 million for 3 years, like per year for 3 years, and I think that's a great spot for him. It allows the team to be flexible with what's around him, whether he is a slot or whether he's an outside. Just get him on the field and play him. You do have Ugo Amadi, who's going to be under contract and back. Flowers has another year. And I know everyone's rolling their eyes when I say Flowers, but after a rough couple of games at the beginning when he first came on for Dunbar, he really settled in and played well until his injury.
He played better after Quandre Diggs started playing better. Quandre Diggs, was kind of in the first 5 or 6 games, and
there's a lot of communication problems.
I think Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams really had to work stuff out for a while in order for the defense to kind of solidify. And I think Flowers ended up being hurt by that. I think we saw that too with the way Thompson, at free safety used to cause Seattle the same issues playing, schematically. And we saw Griffin and Flowers struggle on the outside edges with their free safety play. And as soon as Diggs starts playing better, everyone starts playing better. Adams starts playing better. Diggs is now in sync. He's playing better. He's having he's got 4 interceptions on the year. He's going to the Pro Bowl. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So the whole backfield is now playing better. I'm pretty optimistic, actually. And, I try to stay grounded, whatever, for the show and everything. And just as a fan anyway, I'm fairly grounded, but I'm optimistic about this defense. Since Adams came back from injury, we got Dunlap, the defense has started playing better. The defense is actually kind of a top 15, top 12 unit overall, and you take a look at a couple different things, pass rush, win rate, sacks, pass,
the ability to stop the
quarterback rating against certain players and so forth has all come down and been top 10 level since that time. And so I'm pretty optimistic going into the playoffs that our defense can be a factor.
Underrated factor in the defensive improvement was getting Jordan Brooks healthy, because when Bruce Irvin went down for the injury, you're like, okay, well, that's going to be Jordan Brooks has to step up and play now rather than because they were thinking they'd bring him along more slowly, but they lost Irvin in the first game of the year, and it's like, okay, kid, get out there and play and do your thing. And the first thing that he did was get hurt that ankle. And it coincided to when the defense was terrible. And when he got healthy, when his ankle started getting better and he got back out on the field, the defense started improving. And you look at the stat sheet, you're not seeing a ton of tackles and you're not seeing, that kind of stuff, but he's a strong side linebacker in this scheme. His job
he led the team in tackles last week.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, like, overall, you look at the stats. His job is to set the edge on runs to his side. Containment on runs to go in the other way. He does a lot of stuff in coverage, and he is a big reason on why the run defense has been good. He's been good in coverage, which I know was the knock against him in the draft process. But he's been good and just been really undersold and underappreciated so far in what he's done and has been good. He's played well, and I think that it needs to be said that he is part of the reason why this defense has gone from being historically bad to being, a top 10 defense.
When you got a guy like Jordan Brooks, who's an instinctive linebacker, who's very fast, who plays with a lot of power and hits guys, good tackler, solid tackler. When that guy learns the playbook, understands where he's supposed to be, understands opposing offenses, Bobby Wagner's in his ear all the time. And that guy, all of a sudden, everything clicks for him, right? And he's able to play fast and instinctive without thinking. Then Jordan Brooks becomes like this whole other animal. And that's what we've seen the last 4 or 5 weeks from him. You can go back a little bit further than that, but what I'm saying right now is he's really playing, optimized for being a rookie in this defense, and he fits right in, and KJ Wright's been playing better. That the threesome of those guys is just really solid, and they've been playing the pass better. Everything's been better since they had that meeting, that accountability meeting on defense, and I think, quite frankly, a lot of it stemmed with the miscommunications and schematic issues with Jamal Adams integrating into the defense and trying to figure out Adams, because he doesn't play a traditional strong safety the entire time. He's lining up at strong side linebacker. He's dropping back into coverage. He's playing, strong safety. And so the team kind of needed to figure out Adams, like, where is he going to be? What is he going to do? In this situation, is he going to blitz or is he going to fall back into coverage? So Quandre Diggs consequently was hesitating a little bit, which made the outside corners play hesitant as well. And so now they're all kind of in synchronicity a little bit better, and it shows. I mean, the defense is playing well and coming together right at the right time. I mean, it's crazy. So now we're in a situation, Keith, where we took over first place in the division. We have a chance to win the division this weekend against the Rams. We'll talk about that in a minute. But before we do that, I wanted to get to the Pro Bowl guys, just recognize the guys that have kind of earned their earned a little bit of airtime,
seven guys,
which is tied the franchise record for the amount of players selected. We probably would have had a few more as far as guys that were second or third choice as well, if other guys from other teams weren't able to make it because of injury or Super Bowl or whatever. We won't talk about Super Bowl, but you know what I mean. And
but there's no actual game this year. Right. It's just the honor. Did you get named to it?
Right.
And that's what you're referring to, is because since there's no actual game because of COVID, what you have is a situation where you're not going to get that second wave of guys where people are hurt, so they're not going to play, and so okay, name their replacement.
Pro Bowl alternate. Yes.
Yep. And so we don't have those. And there are a bunch of guys that would have made the roster.
Including maybe a couple of our guys. Let's talk about it.
Well, yeah.
Russell Wilson, Bobby Wagner. So Russell Wilson, what is his eighth Pro Bowl? Bobby Wagner has 7 Pro Bowls. DK Metcalf, his first Pro Bowl. So I want to talk about DK Metcalf just for a second, Keith. So DK Metcalf, 1,223 yards, 10 touchdowns, 64 yards short of all-time franchise record held by Steve Largent of 1,287. He's got 2 games to go to get that. We had talked about
a couple of tough matchups for him coming up to get that.
But whatever.
He'll get it. He'll get it at 64 yards. I expect him to get it, but
I expected him to get it. He almost had a one-handed grab just out of bounds in this last game too that would have added to that total. I think he's going to get it. Here's the deal about Metcalf though, Keith. We had predicted almost his exact stat line at the beginning of the year. I went back and looked at it, and we predicted anywhere from 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns to some outrageous. No, I think it was like 1,600. He could get to 1,600 if everything kind of came together for him, and 14 touchdowns. That was the wild, way out there prediction, and a Pro Bowl. We said Pro Bowl, etc. This guy's going to end up having like 1,300 yards probably 12 touchdowns, and possibly an all-pro selection in his second year.
At 22.
Just turned 23.
Oh, you're right. He did just turn 23. But I mean, he is so young. He will finish his second year at 23. A lot of guys that come into the NFL are already 23, right? Or 24.
I just love the fact that he exceeded our expectations again. Like it's crazy. It really is. And if you really, and we watched every game, every play, every catch, every drop, right? There's just a little bit more to his game. I mean, he's just missing some things. He does drop some balls occasionally. There are yards that he's leaving on the table yet. And the Seahawks haven't even optimized him on being a guy that can move the chains, a guy that they create space for, that they do bubble screens for, and all that stuff. They don't do any of that for him. These are all these yards are coming from, just because he's a workhorse, and he works his ass off. And the team really isn't setting him up for anything easy. There's occasional, move the chain first down throws and stuff, but a lot of stuff's over the top. A lot of stuff, he creates after he has tight coverage and he pushes a guy out of the way or whatever. Very physical, receiver to be able to do that. But it'd be interesting to see if they kind of created an offense around him in a sense, in that they gave him 10 to 12 opportunities a game, and they also gave him some space to work in a defense.
Well, yeah, and you also have a situation where defenses are focusing on him. I mean, go watch the game. You're seeing he is drawing the top corner on each team.
Right.
Even teams that are like the Seahawks that don't like to swap their corners back and forth. They'll be like, nope. Like in this game, watch Jalen Ramsey will be on DK Metcalf almost the entire game, and that makes. I mean, that's their best defensive player other than Aaron Donald, and they're committing him just to DK Metcalf, and they will also roll a safety over to help. That's the kind of attention that he draws, and he's still putting up these numbers.
Did you hold your breath when he came down in that end zone attempt and kind of looked like he tweaked his knee?
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I was no. This team can't lose him.
That would be a season in jeopardy type of an injury.
Because I mean, he is such a huge part of this offense. He makes so much of it work because of his ability to draw all that attention. It allows guys like Freddie Swain and David Moore and Olsen and Disley underneath those guys to do more.
I'm still not convinced yet that there might be something that happened there, that he's playing through a little sprain, a little tweak, a little whatever. I'm just curious as to how it tightens up over the week. Kind of, he's got to work that out a little bit, and what kind of an impact that it has on him, going forward a little bit. I know it's not a long-term situation, but for a couple of weeks it might bother him just enough. I just want to see. Just want to see that. Let's talk about some other guys. Okay. Wagner, 7th Pro Bowl. Hats off to Wagner. Everyone thinks he's having a little bit maybe of a down season. I don't think so. The guy still commands a ton of respect, still makes a ton of plays. Surefire tackler.
You can tell a little bit. There are times where you can tell he's lost a step, and
he hasn't missed any time. His body isn't breaking down. I was looking at him the other day just as a physical specimen on the field, and he's just still that guy.
And he's the guy in charge on defense, and he's what he does pre-snap is as important as what he does post-snap. And he's a Pro Bowler entirely based on post-snap. He's just really smart, really important on everything. But there have been times where, he got ran to the corner. Yeah. And that never happened in the past.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna counter that with just a hair, in that I think there was some hesitation there getting used to Adams in that scenario that you just described, where he he's getting caught pulling himself in one direction where he in normal situation, he probably would have given him a more of a cushion to drop back into coverage slightly sooner. That's all I'm saying. I think the speed wise, I think you're right. I think he's lost half a step since he was drafted. There's no question he was one of the fastest linebackers coming out of college when he came out that year.
Yeah.
But
and now he's what, 31, and it's going to happen. I mean, you're going to have guys
he's just a tackle machine, so he's got a lot of wear and tear.
Yeah, and so I'm not trying to disparage him.
No, I know
play. Because he's been great. This is an absolutely well-earned and deserved Pro Bowl selection. This isn't a guy that made it because of his name and reputation. No. He made it. He got there because of the quality.
He's seventh in the NFL in tackles. I mean, he's still there.
Yeah, and so I want let's not. But what I am saying though is he has lost a little bit of a step, and it happens with everyone.
But he's so damn smart, it doesn't matter.
True, but that's also why getting Jordan Brooks in there with his speed was so important, because what you did is the team speed last year was really lacking.
Yep, you're absolutely right.
With everything that was going on there, and getting a guy like Brooks's speed, that upgrade with his speed at that position makes up for the fact that KJ and Bobby are slowing down. And so it just allows the unit as a whole to be as good as it is, because you needed that extra speed and you weren't getting that in the past. And so just to have that is nice. But it does also signal, like, I know KJ's been having a good year and that
having a great year, Keith.
But when you look forward at this, do you commit to?
I give KJ Wright another 2-year deal out of
Do you commit to that as those two guys continue to slow down?
I mean, Bobby's got another 2 years on his contract. I give KJ another 2 years. You can see then where you're at with those two guys. And Jordan Brooks is going to be there for you. So I'd go forward with those three guys. I mean, there's nothing wrong schematically with the way that we're playing now, even though Jordan Brooks might not be in his natural position, or KJ is not in his natural position. I don't think it matters off the ball.
Those two guys Those two guys are switching back and forth. I mean, officially KJ is the strong side linebacker. I said Brooks is a strong side linebacker earlier because watching the game, that's what they had him do. I mean, the two guys just basically, they kind of played right side and left side, and then rather than strong side and weak side, and they just both did both.
I think the key, the question here is not, do you give a little bit of money to KJ Wright to keep the group together? It's, what do you do with Cody Barton? Because I think you need to figure out if Cody Barton is a guy that you can play as a starter, because if KJ were to get hurt, or if Bobby did, or Jordan Brooks needed to move into the middle, you'd have to have somebody there on the team that's got the ability to come in and play significant minutes, because Bobby and KJ aren't getting any younger, right?
Mm-hmm.
And eventually injuries happen, whatever. I'm not trying to jinx anything. I'm just trying to figure out what the team does strategy wise at that position group. And I think you give KJ some money, but you got to hedge that at the same time. Yeah,
you got to go. I mean, Cody Barton played okay when asked to play this year
on special teams.
But he's been
he's second in the NFL in special teams tackles with 12, along with Nick Bellore,
mm-hmm.
who made the Pro Bowl.
Pro Bowler Nick Bellore.
Yeah, exactly. Carries that forever.
But I think that Cody Barton's got a spot on the team. He's a good backup linebacker and special teamser. Is he a starter? I don't know. I don't know if he is a starter or not. And I don't know if the team knows, because from what they've seen, I think they like him as a backup. If he's the fourth guy or the fifth guy and a special teamer, I think that's ideal. So if that's the case, and you're going to throw, keep KJ around, I think you have to go use another mid-round draft pick on linebacker again and get yourself to be 5 deep. Or you have to re-sign Bruce Irvin and hope that he stays healthy this next year.
And they may. And Bruce isn't going to make $5 or $6 million like he did in this last contract.
No,
They're not going to make that mistake again.
he's making 2 or
pay.
3.
Exactly. All right.
So.
And so let's go through this list of remaining guys. Pro Bowl. Jamal Adams. Come on. Third Pro
NFL
Bowl,
record.
9.5.
NFL record for sacks by defensive back at 9.5. 8.5 was
And
already a record.
And he just
so.
adds so much more. And what do you do, Keith? What do you do? What do you pay this guy? They're going to want a contract extension this year. Will he disrupt the team if he doesn't get that extension and go and plays out the last remaining year of his contract? I hate the idea of Seattle getting to that point because you gave up so much for him. You kind of want to lock that situation in, or you trade him while he's a hot commodity and get everything back that you gave for him, or most of it. Or you pay him like $18 million a year, take up a significant portion of your cap for a strong safety that's a jack of all trades, kind of Swiss Army knife in your defense. What value do you put on Jamal Adams?
Yeah, he's not going to get 18. I mean, that's not.
Come on.
No.
Be realistic, Keith. Be realistic.
I am being realistic.
17. Buda Baker.
Yeah, that contract was stupid.
I know, but that's where the market's at now. You take a look at the top 5, you're still in the 15 range.
That's what I mean, and that's where I'm looking at. So
Jamal Adams is the top of his game.
The Seahawks have
beyond what a strong safety gets paid.
The Seahawks have control over him for the next 3 years because of he's under contract next year, a couple of franchise tags. They have control over him for the next 5 or the next 3 years, and the franchise tag that they would use on him for year 2 of that is going to be worth about $15 million. And really, so that becomes the starting point in negotiations. And
that
so
is
if you
true.
can
That's
get him,
a lot of leverage.
It's 2 years. And you have that $15 million price tag in year 2. So you come in with, and you say, you start it, can you get them for 14.5? And they're going to laugh. And then you go, okay, well, let's go 15. And where's the guaranteed money and all of that? And if you can get him for 15, I think you go for it and do it because he's been good and he's been dynamic. And now that the defense has figured out how to play with him.
I disagree with you. I think they're going to break the market. I really honestly do. I think he's a transcendent talent. Sure, he's got some coverage liabilities now and again, but he gives you so much more, including leadership, all that kind of stuff. Kind of taken over that role a little bit. I can see it coming with from Bobby Wagner transitioning to kind of an Adams, right? And so I think they give him money. I think they back up the truck and they lock him down for like a 4 or 5 year deal at 18 average with $40 million in guarantees. I do.
We'll see.
I think maybe I'm wrong, but I'm like 50% that I'm pretty close.
I just don't, what I don't see is where the leverage is for Adams at this point to
9.5 sacks. Yeah.
No,
it's the sacks.
And I'm talking entirely about the market and contract. And if the Seahawks have him under control for the next 2 years, forget the third year, just the next 2 years at a total of, what does it come out to be? 22 million, right? At 11 million a year average over the next 2 years. And you come in and you offer him 15 million for that, or per year over that, and make it, and those are fully guaranteed.
Up the guarantees. Yeah.
So for over the next 2 years, instead of it being 22 million, it's 30, and it's fully guaranteed. I mean, you're talking about a lot of money, increase, a lot of guarantees, a lot of you're not asking for more than that. I mean, you can, but the way these negotiations work and the way that they play out, I mean, this is what the market says.
Right.
Based on the negotiations.
We have seen lately with Richardson, defensive tackle Richardson, with Clowney, that John Schneider sees a market a certain way. And sometimes these players, high value commodity players, see the market in a different way, and they can't come together, and we lose out. And you don't want to let a guy like Adams be disgruntled, hold out for any reason, whatever. and or command a figure that's so far out there that Seattle just can't go there. So it would be nice to get him locked down early. It used to be a situation where a guy like Michael Bennett would sign a contract just after the season ended, and it'd be nice to kind of get something like this out of the way so it doesn't become a distraction. Because if he goes into next year without a contract and they didn't get a deal done and he goes into the final year, that's just, it just feels weird, especially after giving up 2 firsts and a 5th or whatever we gave up for.
And that's the thing about this is what I'm talking about is the state of the negotiations right now. A year from now, where Adams has played through the final year of his rookie deal, and now you're looking where $15 million is the starting point on the thing, because he's already played for this, and he's like, hey, I took a discount and played on the rookie year, my rookie deal. And so you look over all of it and you're like, he's going to be asking for more, and your leverage is decreased because now you've only got really that's 1 year of control, and it's at a higher number as far as the average, right? Because rather than it being 11 or 12 million a year over 2 years, now it's 15 over 1. You know what I mean? So the leverage shifts into Jamal Adams' favor if they don't get this done soon. The longer this plays out, the stronger Adams' negotiating position is. And so, yeah, I'm with you. Like for completely, like, I think we're coming at this from different angles, but get it done
I wasn't
now.
Sure, like after 8 weeks, and we were a poor defense, had the worst rated, pass defense in the NFL history, all that kind of stuff. I wasn't sure about Jamal Adams, like how they were using him, how he would fit, and what he might be worth. And now, after seeing him kind of integrate better into the defense, I'm thinking, how are we not? We can't afford to lose him. Which is great for Adams, great for the team. I mean, those are good problems to have. Those are the problems you want to have when you give up that much draft capital to get a guy. It's worked out. I think overall, on the balance, this is one of those trades that has worked out. And so now you've got to figure out a way to get him in the fold long term.
Well, all right. They gave up so much in draft capital for him that they really have to get this done, because you cannot afford to not have any, right? Because you're basically just costing yourself a lot of talent, not only with him leaving, but also the 2 first-round picks. You don't want to rent a player
for that cost, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Diggs. Quandre Diggs, first Pro Bowl in his 6th season.
Surprising Pro Bowl selection this year. Last year and in the past, when he was with Detroit, I thought he was more deserving. And in fact, I was so surprised when I saw this was his first Pro Bowl selection, because he was a Pro Bowl caliber player when he came to Seattle.
Yeah. Well, I think in the second half of the season, he really came on.
True.
But
so still
4 interceptions, 9 pass defense, 52 tackles, nice compliment to Adams. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know. Obviously it came together.
Yeah, the first 5 games of the year were kind of rough for him, and then you're right, it started to solidify, and he's been great recently. I mean, just great. But the first 5 games were kind of rough, and that's why I was saying it was a surprise that he was.
It is interesting that we had the worst pass defense in the history of football, and we got 2 of our defensive backs on the Pro Bowl, and both of them were first or second in vote getting at their position group.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, part of it is statistics, right? They're not watching the games, looking at the stats, and you're saying, okay, there's a safety with an NFL record for sacks. Well, that's obvious. Let's throw him in there. Plus, he's the focus of what opposing teams do and that kind of stuff. But the other guy, it's 50 tackles for a defensive back and 4 picks and
4 picks, which is tied first, I think 6th in the NFL.
And so you're like,
and for
okay,
a safety, that's great.
Yeah, and so you're like, that sounds good, but it misses the blown coverages and stuff that happened early in the year and that kind of stuff. Let's not sugarcoat how bad the defense was the first 5 weeks. When we say historically bad, we mean it. We mean,
we were going to have 400 I'll give you I think I have it written down here. I can't remember where it's at. Anyway, here it is. Here's the defense. In weeks 1 through 9, points per game allowed 30.4, weeks 10 through 14, 16.2. Total yards per game, 455.8 in the first 9 weeks, 285.6 weeks 10 through 14. This is before this last game. Pass yards per game, 362.1, 187.2 in the last 4 games. Sacks, 2.4 to 3.4. Now, granted, Keith, we just went through, quote unquote, the easiest part of our schedule, right? With winnable games. But nonetheless, it's the NFL. The defense is really coming together. You can just see the difference, which is good. And I just want to say too, by the way, right now, this podcast is going to go long. So to everyone that's listening out there, thank you. Stick with us a little bit. We're going to get to the Rams preview in just a minute. So let's move on. Let's get to the special teams guys that made the Pro Bowl. Tyler Ott and Nick.
Tyler Ott. We get to mention Tyler Ott. Yay!
It wasn't Myers. It wasn't Myers, and it wasn't Dixon. It was Ott and Ballore. So let's talk about those guys. Tyler Ott. Yay! Like I texted you this morning. I said, "Hey, we get to talk about Tyler Ott again," and we normally just reserve that for the roster preview show at the beginning of the year, because Tyler Ott does such a great and steady job. You don't have to mention him throughout the rest of the year. We had a guy before Tyler Ott came on board. I can't even remember his name now because we ghosted him, and we don't talk about him anymore. But that guy would miss snaps all the time and cause problems, and guys would blow through him on as blocking assignments, all that kind of stuff. Tyler Ott has just been a consummate pro, definite upgrade, one of the best long snappers that I think the franchise has ever had, to be completely honest, just because he just does his job week in, week out, and he's going to his Pro Bowl, man. That's just awesome.
Well, I mean, he does his job week in, week out. When was the last time they had a bad snap?
No, he has never had a bad snap.
Yeah, and that has a lot to do with it. But his job is more than that. I mean, he snaps the ball, on field goal attempts and that kind of stuff, and then he's got to block. And then on punt stuff, he's got to get the ball, and then he's got to get downfield, and he does. And he's just been really good at his job and done a fantastic job. It's really one of those things that people are like, how hard can it be? Like, what's it, whatever. And then you go, no, seriously, like we've seen how bad it can be when you don't have one.
Yeah. And I'll just illustrate this. Tyler Ott. There was a punt versus Washington where Dixon punted from his own 30-yard line, and it went out of bounds untouched at the 3-yard line, right? Like almost 70 yards in the air, bounced out of bounds. Guess who was at the 3-yard line? Mm-hmm. Cody Barton and Tyler Ott.
Yeah.
They were down there when the ball went out of bounds 70 yards downfield to point to the ball, to the ref where the ball went out of bounds.
Yeah. They were there. They were there to cover.
Pride they have. That's pride right there.
If it takes a slightly different bounce and it's heading towards the end zone, you need someone to dive and keep it out of there and pin them deep rather than letting them out at the 20-yard line. And you expect Cody Barton to be down there, or Nick Ballore, or not Quill Griffin, but Keem Griffin. You expect those guys to be down there.
I do have to say there were 5 or 6 Seahawks down the field.
But I'm just saying, there are people you expect to be down there because that's their job. They're the gunners, or the guys that are just on the outside of the formation that block and release and go.
Well, and the offensive linemen have to stick around.
Yeah, and so you've got the long snapper 70 yards downfield.
And he has to wait until the ball is kicked in order for him to release. Isn't that true?
Yes, I know I think it is.
Interior offensive lineman on a punt.
Yeah, I was thinking that it's the tackles and guards have to, and maybe not the long snapper.
Okay, I wasn't clear, but anyway, nonetheless, The hustle plays are just crazy, and the hats off to the special teams unit in general. Top 3 in the NFL this year on special teams coverage. When you consider the kicking game and the punting game, let's talk about those guys. I want to, and we need to talk about them a little bit because we got tweeted at. It's like,
okay, so
one of our listeners
Myers
from Scotland,
and Dixon,
yes.
Myers and Dixon did not make the Pro Bowl, and I think
they did not.
And okay, I understand a little bit for Myers because one, he's missed 3 extra points. He's been perfect in terms of field goals, but he's missed 3 extra points, and so that it detracts from people talking about him. Because if he had made the easy ones, the extra points, and everyone's like, he's perfect, including the 61-yarder and all of that, and it changes the narrative and people talk about it more. And I think he would have made it.
And he just didn't have opportunities early in the year.
And that's the other thing is over the first 5 games, the offense was so good at converting those opportunities into touchdowns. He only had 2 field goals after 5 games. Yeah. And so people weren't talking about him then and all of that. So it's fine. Okay. He's been great. He hasn't missed a kick yet this
31
year.
31 consecutive field goals. Yep. Franchise record, Lindo Mare, including the 61-yarder you mentioned. I mean, great job, Jason Myers. Keep it up.
And so
I have a dependable kicker.
He has been great, and I think deserving of a Pro Bowl nod. But at the same time, I do kind of understand it because of the lack of opportunities and because of a couple of missed extra points. Now, for Dixon, though, I don't get his exclusion
of punts inside the 20-yard line at 27. He's
leads,
one of the top guys in.
He leads the league in pinning teams back, but punts inside the 20 and punts inside the 10. He had, even with that, he's got an average, a punting average of it's like 49.7. It's just under 50, which is one of the top ones in the league. And his net, which is more important than booming at 56 yards doesn't matter if you outkick your coverage and you give them a return, right? So it's not just the average, but it's the net average, right? And he, is near the top of the league in that as well. And these are the things that matter. If you're a punter, how far do you kick it? How much can you limit the return? How good are you at pinning the other team deep? And he is an all-pro level kicker in all of those categories.
And this is why
I don't get why he's not there.
This is why Pete Carroll loves him. This is part of Pete Carroll's game. This is right on the inside lane of where Pete Carroll thinks, because it's about field position with Pete Carroll. It's about flipping the field when your offense struggles, and you're in your own end of your on your side of the field. And a guy like Dixon can completely flip the field and pin a team back. Just in the Washington game, the average starting field position on Dixon's punt versus Washington was the 8-yard line. He had 4 punts that were started Washington with an average to go of 92 yards. That is a weapon.
You pin a team back far enough, like that one that we were talking about earlier that went out of bounds at 3, and it limits what the offense is willing to do, because they don't want to take a chance at having a holding penalty in the end zone, because that's a safety, right? That's 2 points and you lose possession. And so you start to limit their options when you can pin them that deep, and it just makes life more difficult for the opposing team, on top of the fact that the way the defense's scheme is designed, with, as we talked about earlier, where they go ahead, take that 4-yard completion, take that 6-yard completion to the tight end, do these little things and try and string together, a 16-play drive if you want to score, but don't make any mistakes and don't have any penalties, because either one of them will make it so you can't get there. And so that's what they end up doing. And when you can pin them back where the average starting field position is the 8 on those punts, you're basically saying, go be perfect for a 14 or 16
and Washington
play drive.
Was for 2 drives out of 9.
Yeah.
Right.
And it wasn't, that's not enough to win you a game. And that's the point. And so having that style of defense, the way it's schemed up, and requires that you have or doesn't require, but it certainly helps when you have a guy like Dixon that can pin guys deep and flip the field. So if your offense sputters at the 30, and you're like, okay, we're giving them decent field position. Nope. Instead, you got Dixon, and they're gonna have to be backed up because he can hit the ball that far, and he can do weird things with the spin and all that kind of stuff. So, he deserves a Pro Bowl nod, just straight up. He's one of the best in the league, and not just talent-wise, blah, blah, one of the best. No, he's having arguably the best year as a punter of anyone in the league, and should have made it. I'm surprised he didn't. Honestly, as surprised as I am that Diggs made it, I am more surprised that Dixon did not.
All right, let's race through what we've got remaining.
Okay.
Let's talk about the NFC West really quick, some playoff implications, and let's talk about this Rams game.
Yep. The Rams lost to the Jets.
Yeah. So Seattle clinches playoff berth. They're 10-4.
Mm-hmm.
The Rams moved to 9-5 with a loss versus the Jets, 20-23. I think the Rams coach elected to go for it on a 4th and 4 late in the game, and instead of kicking a field goal from 37 yards out, they went for it. Goff ended up trying to throw a long pass to Gerald Everett. That pass was fell to the turf, and the Jets took over and won the game. The Rams were favored by 17 points in that game. They were only the 5th team in NFL history that was favored by 17 points or more in a game to lose. It couldn't happen to a better club.
The Rams. Also, it sets up this week. The Seahawks clinch the NFC West with a win.
Yep. We can clinch by winning one of our last 2 remaining games. So the interesting thing was that Seattle,
no, they have to win. They have to win this week, because if they lose this week,
they have the tiebreaker. Yeah,
the Rams have the tiebreaker. Okay, so they need, if they win this week, they clinch the NFC West. They clinch a home field.
That's right.
Game in the playoffs. So that's what's at stake this week.
Cardinals are 7-6.
No longer in contention for anything.
And the 49ers 5-9. They're out.
Yep.
Mathematically eliminated, which is crazy considering they were in the Super Bowl last year.
And they have a Super Bowl caliber roster when healthy, but they missed, the bulk of their talent spent the year on injured reserve. And it's just a weird year for them. I mean, you can't go in and have all of your stars end up on injured reserve at the same time and expect to continue to win. And yeah, they got some of them back, but like Richard Sherman's back, but he's not playing real well. So yeah,
we don't have to talk about them anymore. Yeah, until next year. Seahawks 9th postseason berth in 11 seasons under Pete Carroll and John Schneider. 8th double-digit win total in 9 seasons prior to 2012. Seattle had a total of 5 double-digit win seasons in their 36-year history. So
yeah, they've never had back-to-back double-digit wins before Pete Carroll, and yeah.
So I read on Twitter that we were mediocre, that we were a mediocre team, right? Mediocre team. And I was like, you guys obviously weren't old enough to remember the previous 30 some odd years before Pete Carroll showed up. That was mediocre. Most
people remember the last year of Holmgren, the first year, or the 1 year of Jim Mora, and the first couple of years of Pete Carroll, that were a 4-year bad stretch, and that's what they remember. They don't remember the early 90s pre-Mike Holmgren teams that I think the best year in that stretch was 6 wins.
Yeah.
Bottomed out in 92 with 2.
We have made the playoffs in 14 of the last 18 years. So somebody that's 18 years old has only missed the playoffs 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I was 18, we had missed the playoffs all but 2 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, so think of it. Okay. In that same time period, the Seattle Mariners have not made the playoffs once.
Yeah. Mediocre. Yeah.
You want to talk about, right? Because it has been
the
20 years since the Mariners have made the playoffs.
Yeah.
Can we just stop with the
All right. All right. So the NFC West, it's on the line. It's on the line this week. This is a big game. The Rams.
It is.
Rams coming in, having just lost to the Jets. I kind of almost wish they didn't, because they'll be ready mentally, I think, to put that game behind them. We're going to get the Rams' best game, right? We're going to get the Seahawks best.
We were going to get the Rams' best game anyways, because it's for the NFC West. Like, even if they'd gone and blown out the Jets, do you really think they were going to come in against the Seahawks and like be overconfident and feel like they've got it? I don't, because they know a loss.
Here's the deal for me is we lost to the Rams already this year. We're not going to lose to the Rams 2 times in 1 year.
I don't believe
especially
so, no.
in a year like this where the NFC West is on the line. We saw last year what happened, right? 49ers came in, NFC West was on the line, and we ended up dropping the game. I think the players,
1 yard line.
The players understand the significance, I think, of these things.
This is a better team
than
they were last year.
Team. It's a playoff team. Russell Wilson's, you can say what you want, struggles or not, whatever. He's a playoff caliber quarterback when the game is on the line in a highly charged situation. Man, I wish the 12s were going to be there. This game
absolutely
would be like playoff atmosphere, no doubt about it.
Oh, it would be
and the
loud.
Seahawks could definitely use their energy right now. But nonetheless, I think the Seahawks know the significance of this game. There's a lot riding on this game. There's a home field playoff game on the line. Everything. So these types of situations bring out the best in teams, and Pete Carroll has always had their teams ready to play in these types of situations. So and Cam Akers, I thought, was a key factor in this game coming in.
He's not going
to play. He's got a high ankle sprain. He would have had 100 and some odd yards and a touchdown in that game against the Jets. Probably would have changed everything, except for 50 of his yards got called back for 3 separate penalties, which really diminished his ability to be a factor in that game. But I was a little worried about Cam Akers.
Cam Akers is a special player, and he was the guy that you and I talked about a lot in the pre-draft stuff, because we had a feeling that Seattle was going to look at a running back, and they ended up with DJ Dallas much later in the draft.
By the way, DJ Dallas went out with a hair cast on his leg. Turned out he had a sprained ankle. Don't know how significant that is.
At grade 3, as of this morning, they announced it was a grade 3, which is severe. He's probably going to injured reserve. He's done.
But better than a break, or better than torn ligaments to the point where he needs surgery on him.
Yeah. I got to tell you, getting Rashad Penny back now with DJ Dallas heading to IR, that's serendipitous timing.
Fortuitous, absolutely. All right. So how do you see this game going? Like, what's going to happen in this game, Keith?
Well, okay, so this is a completely different matchup than it was the last time these two teams played. Seattle's defense is better, and you're looking at a Rams team without, probably their best offensive player in Cam Akers.
We didn't have Carson last time either.
Yeah, we didn't have Carson. I don't think we had.
We didn't have Hyatt either.
We didn't have either of them. Did Jamal Adams play?
Jamal Adams went out in that game.
That was a game he went out in.
Dunlap's first game as a Seahawk.
So it comes down to
Jordan Brooks, I think, was hurt too.
Yeah, this is a different Seattle team with a much better defense than the first time these two teams played. They've got some talent. I think Cooper Kupp's going to give them some headaches because, well, he's Cooper Kupp, and that's what Cooper Kupp does. Yeah. I mean, he gives everybody headaches, and so they're going to be able to move the chains here and there with him, and
Brown and Henderson at running back instead of Akers. They're decent still.
Yeah, I mean they are. Their offensive line's not as good as it was when
Whitworth.
Yeah, I mean their offensive line's taken a step back. They've still got players around Goff. It comes down to which Goff shows up, and honestly, he's just okay.
He's proven to be a horrible long ball thrower. He's a dink and dunk kind of guy. He's a game manager kind of quarterback, which is really all that the Rams have needed, considering their defense has been, a top 10 defense in the NFL,
Yeah.
top in the NFC West. And, when you take a look at Aaron Donald and Ashawn Robinson in the middle, Fox and Brockers on the ends, Leonard Floyd and Jalen Ramsey on that defense. Their defense is kind of where it's at. Their offense, though, has always been able to score and move the ball and kind of keep up with teams, and they win. But I don't know what to make of the Rams. I really don't. I think we should win this game. I feel like we should win this game.
Yeah, the Seahawks are a better team defensively than the first time these two teams played. And it's not like the Rams had a ton of success against Seattle the first time these two teams played.
Well, and that was the game that Seattle kind of got clogged up on offense. One of the first times of the year that really we faced a defense and we kind of got beat.
Yeah. And so that was where the problems were, was their defense versus Seattle's offense. And it was also like, there were some issues there. They really wanted to go deep on every play, but
and we didn't have a running game.
Jalen Ramsey, really put the skids on DK Metcalf, and there was no running game because there was no, of the Carson Hyde Penny trio. All three of them were not active, and now you're going to have all three of them active in this game. So the running game's going to be there. It's going to be better, and I think that will take some of the pressure off Metcalf and Wilson and give them, the opportunity to pick their spots a little more, do a little more underneath stuff, and just have some more success. It's going to kind of be like the Washington game in that it's going to be a slog at times because the front four is really good. And the addition of Jalen Ramsey at corner to frustrate Metcalf is going to be a thing as well. But
I'm kind of looking forward to Lockett, though. Lockett's been kind of under the radar this year, but he's got 85 catches. He's literally 10 catches away from having the most catches in a single season by any wide receiver in Seahawks history.
Which is crazy because you just think of how much he's just disappeared at times this year.
He has, but he's also had some big games, and early on in the first part of the year, he was on fire.
Oh, and he just destroyed Arizona in both of those games. That the coaching staff and the defensive backs in Arizona, they have nightmares about Tyler Lockett.
So in a game like this, it sets up well for Lockett. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams actually pay more attention to Lockett in this game than they do Metcalf, because you can leave Jalen Ramsey on Metcalf and double up on Lockett, and that really takes a lot away from Seattle because the focus on this game is a similar approach that I think that you would have against Washington, where you've got a stout defensive line. I think Seattle tries to run straight at them. If they're successful on the ground, Seattle wins this game going away, I think. If they struggle a little bit with the ground game, and you take away Metcalf with Ramsey and you double up on Lockett a little bit, you're going to depend on your tight ends and your third and fourth wide receivers to come through in this game. And I think that's going to be the approach that the Rams would have defensively against Seattle. What do you think?
Well, I think that you can do that to your own peril because, yes, you have Ramsey and he can shut down Metcalf. But if you completely just say, here, go play him one-on-one because we're going to roll coverage to Tyler Lockett all day, you're going to give up some big plays to Metcalf because Wilson will throw it up and Metcalf will go get it, even when he's covered. And you have to give everybody help, no matter who they are against Metcalf. And so, sure, go do that. And the Seahawks will hit a couple big plays and they'll get them out of that.
What do you think of the pass rush that the Rams have against Russell Wilson? I mean, that to me is the deal. Can we get Russell Wilson protection? In fact, we have. The last two games, Russell Wilson has gone untouched, unsacked.
He's gotten unsacked. They had 3 quarterback hits last game, but no sacks. And honestly, they did that with a lot of max protect stuff. A lot of keeping Will Disley in to help Cedric Abuahe.
But if you get Shell back this week, that could actually help and open up your offense a little bit more.
Because if they can get Shell back, that really helps. And actually, getting Olsen back helps too, because now you can line up with 2 tight ends and dictate some coverage that way, and then still have help and still have one of them go out into coverage.
I
And
think that actually opens up your passing game a little bit on first and second down.
yeah. So you have you do have some other options, and being able to run the ball should help. Having Carson back and Hyde there, and that's just, it's all good for Seattle's offense. I see this going Seattle's way. The first Rams game was really frustrating because it was poorly schemed by Seattle's coaches. And I want to believe they're not going to make the same mistakes again. They saw what didn't work.
Do you think it's going to be a slog and a low-scoring affair, or do you predict a high-scoring game?
I think it's going to be kind of somewhere in the middle. There's going to be some slog elements to it because of the Rams front four. And it's going to, kind of like the Washington game, where there's going to be times when it.
Are they going to be able to score points on Seattle? Seattle has gone 4 games in a row while allowing opponents less than 20 points. Granted, they've been inferior opponents offensively, but nonetheless, Seattle's defense is playing really well.
Yeah, they're gonna be able to score some because they're gonna be able to string together some drives, and you're gonna have guys like Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp be really frustrating if you're a Seattle fan. And so I expect this game to be, kind of a mid-scoring game where Seattle wins something like 27-23.
I was thinking the exact same score, Keith. I really was, honestly.
Yeah.
I think Seattle can score 27. I wouldn't surprise me if Seattle actually scores more. They could get on a roll and score in this game against this defense. I just really do. I think for some reason I have a feeling that the Rams are slightly vulnerable right now. They're really pressed. Their back's against the wall. Division's on the line. They have a lot of players that haven't been in that position before, right? And I just think that Seattle has the ability here to kind of give them a knockout punch and score some points. Seattle hasn't been scoring a lot of points lately. Let's get back up into scoring some 30 some odd points. And our defense is playing really well.
If Seattle wins this, they clinch the division, but they also push the Rams to 9-6,
to a point where they might lose out in the playoffs against Chicago. And Chicago is two games behind them.
Well, yeah, they get down to 9-6, and now they're playing their final game of the year against Arizona
for their playoff lives.
And both of those teams are fighting for their playoff lives.
Yeah.
That becomes a playoff game right there. It's a must-win for both those teams, and that's a rough spot to be in. So they're going to come out. They're going to do some things in this game, especially if the Seahawks get a lead. The Rams may start pulling out their trick plays and fake punts.
The Rams are not a come-from-behind team.
That's what I mean. Like they may pull out some weird stuff if Seattle gets a lead, because they know they have to. They can't afford to lose this game. So Seahawks better be ready for the weirdness.
Interesting. Wow. So Hecker could be one of those guys where I hate that guy, that punter. He's one of those guys. I think he's tricked us before in the past.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
So, oh yeah.
Anyway, let's get out of here. Let's go get a win, man. Let's win this division.
Let's do it.
Let's get back up on top of the NFC West. It's been a little while, and get a home field playoff game, and get some advantage. I think having an advantage in the playoffs is understated, even without a crowd right now. Not having to travel to a really cold weather place like Green Bay in the first round, or back east again to Washington. I wouldn't, you can't pick your opponents or whatever, but to play again against Washington, I would take that matchup, but to travel back east again and maybe be a lot colder and more miserable back there in January. I'd rather play in Seattle. You might have some rain, but.
So Washington's at 6 wins. They don't get to 8, do they?
I don't know, but the Giants, who knows? Giants.
Well, here's the reason why I say that is because
they're
Seattle's the only team that has ever made the playoffs with a sub 500 record, the 7-9.
If we beat
in 2010,
if we beat the Rams, there's a high likelihood that we could face the Rams in the wild card game. There's like a 38 to 50% chance, I think, that we face the Rams in the wild card at some point in the playoffs. I know. I know it's crazy, but it is
I
what
don't-
it is. You get into the playoffs, you get the dance,
Yeah.
you give yourself a chance. That's what it's
Yeah.
all about. So the Seattle's going to go there. We'll talk about more playoff stuff in the next couple of weeks for sure. Especially after this game, we'll really kind of know. We'll have a feel for where we're going to be at. So, but the important thing is we are already in the playoffs. We've already cinched that up. So, all right. So find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. I'm at MW Seahawks. The show is at Hawks Playbook on Twitter, SeahawksPlaybook.com. Has all of the shows archived, and your favorite podcast app has our show every week in your feed if you subscribe. So do that. And you can find us on YouTube as well. We have a YouTube channel. Look us up, SeahawksPlaybook.com. And Seahawks Playbook Podcast is the name of the show. And until next week, Keith, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Phil is at MW Seahawk. Keith is at Myers NFL. And the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.